All right, let's dive into this placebo effect stuff you sent over.
Sounds good.
We've got some excerpts from a 1993 master's thesis you found.
Okay.
And it seems like there's a lot more to this than just, you know, like sugar pills and tricking people, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It seems to be about how our minds and what we believe can actually like tie into the healing process,
Yeah.
which is pretty wild.
It really is. It challenges, the way we traditionally think about medicine and how the body works,
Yeah.
like that biomechanical model where everything is just, a cause and effect, a machine.
Right, like fix the part and you fix the problem.
Yeah, the body is a machine.
Right.
But the placebo effect kind of throws a wrench in that whole idea
Yeah, for sure.
because it shows that, our thoughts and beliefs can actually have a real, tangible impact on our physical health.
It's like, how can we even separate the mind and body when we see stuff like this happening?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the thesis uses that example of Mr. Walker, who had that chronic back pain,
Mm-hmm.
and he got relief from an injection.
Oh, well,
But it was just salt water.
yeah.
He thought it was some strong medicine,
Yeah.
and his pain went away.
That's incredible. It really highlights the power of belief and expectation.
I mean, are we all just walking around like susceptible to this kind of thing?
Well, to some extent, yes. It's not like magic or anything, but it shows there's more to healing than just the physical stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not just pills either.
Oh, really?
Even surgery can have a placebo component.
Whoa, what do you mean?
Like, there's this study mentioned in the thesis. It was for mammary artery ligation, a heart procedure, and they did sham surgery, like a fake surgery, on some patients.
Oh, wow.
And guess what? The results were basically the same as the real surgery.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like even cutting someone open can have a placebo effect.
Well, it's not the cutting itself. It's more about the whole ritual of the surgery.
Okay.
The belief that something is being done to fix you that can be powerful.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So how does science explain this? Is there any hard evidence for how this belief stuff actually works?
Well, it's not as simple as, finding a single mechanism in the brain.
Okay.
But there are different scientific and philosophical perspectives the thesis talks about.
Okay.
Like, there's this clinico-empirical position,
Okay.
which basically says instead of getting hung up on finding one root cause for every illness,
Right.
maybe we should just focus on what works,
Okay.
even if we don't totally get why it works.
I can get behind that.
Right.
Like if it works, it works.
Exactly. And this model actually embraces the placebo effect as a legitimate part of treatment.
So it's not about ignoring science. It's more like expanding our idea of what could be considered medicine. Right?
Exactly.
I like that.
It's about being open to different possibilities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The thesis also dives into this idea of causal fields, which might sound a little complicated.
It does. It kind of sounds like a physics thing or something.
It is a bit heady, yeah.
Yeah.
But think of it like a garden.
Okay. I like gardens.
Right. A plant doesn't just grow because of the seed. You need the right soil, sunlight, water.
Yeah, for sure.
All these things working together.
Uh-huh.
Same goes for illness. There isn't always a single cause, more like a whole field of factors.
Right. It's not just a one-to-one thing.
Exactly. And the placebo effect is part of that field.
Huh. So it's like it adds another layer of complexity to how we think about getting sick and getting better.
Absolutely.
It's not as simple as we might think.
Right. And it really throws another wrench into that whole mind-body problem philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, philosophy can be a real headache sometimes.
It can be, but this is a big one.
Yeah, I mean, how can something that's happening in our minds, like a belief, actually have a physical effect on our body?
It's a huge question, and the placebo effect really forces us to confront it.
Makes you wonder, what else are we missing?
Yeah, what other connections are there that we haven't even discovered yet?
It's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is.
So I guess, is there a theory that explains all this mind-body stuff, like how they actually connect?
Well, there are a few different theories, but none of them fully explain it.
Yeah.
The most common one is dualism, which says the mind and body are separate.
But, if they're separate, how can they affect each other?
Right. That's a problem with dualism. It doesn't really explain how the mind and body interact, especially when we see something like the placebo effect happening.
It's like, if the mind is totally separate, how can it influence healing? It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Like saying a ghost can move furniture or something.
Yeah, it doesn't quite add up.
So what other theories are there?
Well, there's biological naturalism,
Okay.
which suggests that even though we don't fully understand the mind scientifically,
Right.
it's still a product of our biology.
So it's like part of our physical makeup, just we don't have the tools to measure it yet.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, we didn't understand subatomic particles until quantum mechanics came along.
Yes.
Maybe we need a whole new scientific revolution to understand the mind.
That's possible.
And how it ties into our bodies,
Right,
how it
yeah.
affects healing and all that.
Exactly.
That is wild.
It is.
So it's not about choosing between, like, science or belief. It's more like recognizing that we still have a lot to learn
That's a great way to sum it up.
about the mind and its power.
Absolutely.
It's kind of humbling in a way.
It is. It really makes you realize the limits of our current understanding.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where this idea of the Pleistobugenic complex comes in.
Okay, what's that?
It describes how the patient, the healer, and the cultural context all play a role in shaping the meaning of the illness and influencing the outcome.
So it's not just about what the doctor does, but how they do it.
Exactly. Their communication style, the environment they create, the patient's expectations, it all works together.
Like bedside manner matters.
It definitely does.
No,
It's like a dance between all these different elements. The thesis actually uses the example of psalm singing
Yeah.
being used as a placebo in the past.
Interesting.
It wasn't the singing itself that helped, but the belief system around it.
Right, like if you believe something will work, maybe it actually can.
Exactly. The meaning people ascribe to it can be powerful.
That's fascinating.
It is.
But I mean, this also brings up some ethical questions, right?
That's a whole other can of worms.
Like, can doctors really use this placebo effect stuff without being, like, deceptive?
Yeah, that's a big concern.
Tricking people into getting better doesn't seem right.
No, it's not about tricking anyone. It's about understanding the potential of the mind and using it ethically.
So we'll have to unpack that in the next part.
Definitely.
But before we move on to the ethics, is there anything else from the research that stood out to you, like anything that really surprised you?
You know, what really struck me was how the thesis emphasized the doctor's role, not just in treating the physical symptoms,
Right.
but in shaping the patient's understanding of their illness.
So they're not just like delivering a diagnosis, they're actually helping the patient make sense of what's happening to them.
Exactly. It's like being a translator between the medical world and the patient's experience.
Huh. That's an interesting way to think about it.
And that process of meaning-making can be incredibly therapeutic in itself.
Like just understanding what's going on can help you feel better.
It can.
That's powerful.
It is. It really highlights the importance of the doctor-patient relationship.
And how it can influence healing.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about pills and procedures, it's about the whole experience.
Exactly.
The human connection, the communication, the trust.
All of that plays a role.
This is fascinating stuff.
It really is.
But I think we need to take a break and come back to those ethical considerations.
You're right. That's a whole other discussion.
We'll save that for part 2 of our deep dive into the placebo effect.
Sounds good.
This is getting pretty deep.
It is, but that's what we're here for.
To dive deep.
Exactly.
I love it.
Me too. Picking up where we left off, this placebo effect really challenges how we think about the mind then body in medicine.
Yeah, it's like, how can something you believe, something in your mind, affect your actual physical body?
Right. It makes you wonder if we've been missing something by focusing so much on just the biological stuff.
Yeah, like what if our thoughts and expectations are just as important as the medicine we take?
The thesis dives into some pretty heavy philosophy to try and answer that.
Oh boy, philosophy.
It gets deep, but it's interesting stuff.
Okay, I'm game.
So, it talks about Descartes, the I think, therefore I am guy.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
He believed the mind and body were totally separate.
But if they're separate, how can they influence each other? That doesn't really make sense with the placebo effect.
That's the problem with dualism, which is that idea of the mind and body being separate things.
Okay.
It can't really explain how they interact, especially when we see evidence that beliefs can impact healing.
Right, it's like, if my mind is over here, or my body's over there, how can they talk to each other?
Exactly.
And the thesis talks about some other dualistic theories too, right?
Yeah, like parallelism, where the mind and body are in sync but don't actually affect each other.
So they're just like doing their own thing?
Yeah, running parallel but not connected.
Okay.
Or epiphenomenalism, where the mind is just a byproduct of brain activity with no real power of its own.
So like the mind is just along for the ride.
Kinda, yeah, just a side effect.
And none of those really explain the placebo effect, do they?
Not really, because the placebo effect shows that the mind can actually have a real impact on the body.
It's not just passively watching.
Right, it's an active player.
So are we just stuck then? no theory really explains it.
Well, the thesis brings up this other idea called biological naturalism.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
It suggests that the mind, even though we can't fully measure it scientifically, is still a product of our biology.
So it's like part of our physical makeup. We just don't have the tools to fully understand it yet.
Exactly. Like, we didn't always know about subatomic particles,
Right.
but they were there all along.
We just needed the right tools to see them.
Exactly.
So maybe we need a new scientific revolution to really understand the mind.
It's possible. Maybe someday we'll have the tools to measure and map the mind just like we do the body.
And then we can really see how they're connected and how the mind influences healing.
That would be amazing.
It would change everything.
It really would.
Okay, so this biological naturalism, it's basically saying the mind is part of the body.
Yeah, it's not separate. It's all connected.
But then how do we explain things like thoughts and feelings? They don't seem physical.
That's the tricky part, right? It's like we know the mind exists, we experience it every day,
Yeah.
but we don't have a good way to explain it scientifically yet.
It's like science can't fully grasp the subjective experience of being a human.
It's a real challenge, but maybe that's where the placebo effect can help us. Because it shows that our subjective experiences, our beliefs and expectations, can actually have a measurable impact on our physical bodies.
So it's like a bridge between the subjective and the objective.
Exactly. It's proof that the mind can influence the body, even if we don't fully understand how yet.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. It really highlights the power of the mind.
And the limitations of our current scientific understanding.
Right. We still have a lot to learn.
Okay, so we've talked about the mind-body problem, we've talked about different theories, but how does this all translate into practical applications in medicine? Like, what can doctors actually do with this information about the placebo effect?
That's the big question, right?
It's all well and good to philosophize, but how can we actually use this to help people?
Well, I think it starts with a shift in perspective.
Okay, what do you mean?
Instead of seeing the body as just a machine, we need to start thinking about the whole person.
So not just treating the symptoms, but considering their beliefs, their emotions, their context.
Exactly. And that's where understanding the placebo effect
Mhm.
becomes so powerful.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because it shows us that we can create clinical environments that enhance healing.
So it's not just about the specific treatment, but the whole experience.
Exactly. The way the doctor communicates, the environment they create, the patient's expectations, it all matters.
So bedside manner is important.
It is. It's not just about being nice. It's about creating a therapeutic alliance.
A partnership between the doctor and the patient.
Right. Where they work together towards healing.
And placebo effect can help us do that.
Exactly. By understanding the placebogenic complex.
Right, that interplay between the patient, the healer, and the context.
We can create conditions that maximize the placebo response.
So it's like setting the stage for healing to happen.
That's a great way to put it.
And that's ethical, right? We're not tricking anyone. We're just creating a supportive environment.
Exactly. It's about harnessing the power of the mind in an ethical way.
But how do we do that? Like,
Yeah.
what are some concrete things doctors can do?
Well, it starts with communication,
Okay, so talking to your patients.
but not just giving them information.
It's more than that.
It's about listening to them, understanding their concerns, their fears, their hopes.
So really hearing them
Exactly. And then explaining things in a way they can understand.
so they feel empowered.
Exactly. Not just like a passive recipient of treatment.
But like an active participant in their own healing.
Right. And that can make a huge difference.
It's like giving them a sense of control.
It is. And that can reduce anxiety, boost their mood, and even improve their physical symptoms.
So it's not just about what the doctor does, but how they do it.
Absolutely. The way they interact with the patient, the way they frame the treatment.
It all matters.
It really does.
This is fascinating stuff.
It is. And it really makes you realize that there's so much more to healing than just pills and procedures.
It's about the whole person, the mind, the body, the spirit.
Exactly. And the placebo effect shows us just how powerful that connection can be.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It really is.
But I think we need to move on to the ethical considerations now.
You're right. That's a whole other can of worms.
Because if the placebo effect is so powerful,
It raises some important questions about how we use it.
right, like, can we really harness this power without being deceptive?
That's the big question.
Because we can't just go around giving people sugar pills and telling them it's a miracle cure.
No, that would be unethical.
But on the other hand, if we know that a positive mindset and a supportive environment can help people heal, shouldn't we be doing everything we can to create those conditions?
It's a tricky balance, right?
Yeah, like how do we use this knowledge for good without crossing the line.
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready for part 3.
Let's dive in. So we've been talking about this placebo effect and all its implications, and it really makes you think.
Yeah, it's like we have all this scientific knowledge, all this amazing technology, but we're still just scratching the surface of what we know about the human body and mind.
And the placebo effect really highlights that, doesn't it? It shows that there's this whole other dimension to healing that we're only beginning to understand.
It's like we've been so focused on the nuts and bolts, the physical mechanisms, that we've overlooked the power of belief and expectation.
And the thesis really drives that point home, arguing that the placebo effect isn't just some quirky side effect of treatment.
It's like an integral part of how we experience health and illness,
It's woven into the very fabric of the doctor-patient relationship.
which makes you realize that healing is much more dynamic and interactive than we might have thought.
It's not just about delivering a specific intervention, it's about creating a context where healing can occur.
And that context includes everything from the physical environment of the clinic to the doctor's communication style to the patient's cultural beliefs.
It's about creating a space where trust, hope, and meaning can flourish.
So it's not about throwing science out the window. It's about integrating it with a deeper understanding of the human experience.
Exactly. It's about moving towards a more holistic and patient-centered approach to healthcare.
One that embraces the complexities of the mind-body connection.
And that's why this idea of the placebogenic complex is so important.
It reminds us that the placebo effect isn't just about giving someone a sugar pill. It's about the whole interplay of factors that contribute to healing.
It's about the patient's expectations, the doctor's beliefs, the shared cultural understanding of illness.
The thesis makes a great analogy, comparing the placebo effect to a theatrical performance.
Oh, yeah, I like that one.
You have the patient, the healer, and the setting all playing their parts in this carefully orchestrated drama.
And just like in a good play, the success of the performance depends on the believability of the actors, the strength of the narrative, and the engagement of the audience.
So the doctor's role goes far beyond simply delivering information or performing procedures.
They need to be skilled communicators, attentive listeners, and compassionate guides, helping the patient navigate the often confusing and frightening world of illness.
It's about creating a therapeutic alliance, a true partnership built on trust and mutual respect.
And that's where the true power of the placebo effect lies, in harnessing the innate capacity of the human mind to influence healing.
Not through trickery or deception, but through a genuine understanding of the mind-body connection.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our thoughts, beliefs, and expectations can have a profound impact on our physical well-being.
And that's a powerful message, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you wonder what other potentials we might unlock if we fully embrace this understanding.
Well, this deep dive has certainly been eye-opening, to say the least.
It's challenged me to think about healing in a whole new way.
It's made me realize that there's still so much we don't know about the human mind and its incredible ability to heal.
And it leaves us with a lot to ponder, doesn't it?
It definitely does. If our beliefs and expectations can have such a profound impact on our physical well-being, what other untapped potentials might lie within us? That's something for all of us to think about.
Absolutely. It's a question worth exploring.
So, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of the placebo effect.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.